Hi friends, so far I have explained about the engine, transmission, torque converter, then the mechanical gearboxes, the clutch, then the propeller shaft and the universal joint, the differential, rear axle and final drives, then brakes, then the steering system. This chapter I am going to explain about the automotive suspension system, that is suspension system being used in the present generation automobiles. This will be having total 5 videos. The first video will be on the introduction of the suspension system, followed by the second video will be explaining about the critical parts of the suspension system and the functioning of the leaf springs and coil springs, and then in third video about the shock absorbers, and fourth video about the two types of suspension systems being used in the majority of the vehicles, that is the McPherson suspension system and the rigid axial suspension system. And the fifth video will be I will be talking about the double wishbone suspension system and the multi-link suspension system, then the hydro-pneumatic suspension system. Let us have a look about the roads on which we drive the vehicles. The roads with potholes, roads with bumps and humps, the gravel road, village roads, and the roads with a lot of undulations, uneven surfaces. We will come across all these type of roads when we are driving the vehicle. What happens if the vehicle is very rigid without any flexibility between the surface and the chassis? It leads to the complications like the back pain to the driver as well as the passengers traveling in the vehicle. Cracks or breakages in the metallic parts of the vehicle. Ultimately, creates a lot of strain on the driver. So what is required here? We need a mechanism to absorb all these kinds of shocks or vibrations arises during the driving on such road conditions. So such mechanism provided in a vehicle to absorb all kinds of shocks and vibrations is called the suspension system of the vehicle. So what are the main functions of any suspension system in a as discussed? This kind of bumping action leads to vibrations, then cracks, again I am telling you, and spine problems. To overcome all these things, the main jobs, the main three critical functions of any suspension system are: it should give comfort, the first and foremost, to the driver and as well as the passengers traveling the vehicle, and should give the good control to the driver who is operating the vehicle. So in the absence of the control, which may lead to the accidents also. The comfort, the control. The third one is the contact. So all the tires, 4 tires or 6 tires, whatever may be, fitted to the vehicle are always should be in full and proper contact with the road. So it should give three main functions, that is comfort, control, and good contact to the road. So together it gives the happy driving to the driver. As discussed, such kind of roads cannot be avoided. And what the suspension system really does in a vehicle, it absorbs a lot of vibrations through dampening process. This figure indicates without any absorbing the vibrations or shocks. This is with absorbing the shocks or vibrations generated through the undulations of the road. Observe this. Imagine this red body, red box is the vehicle. Imagine the fate of the vehicle and the passenger sitting in the vehicle. If there is no proper shock absorbing mechanism, and see this how smoothly and slowly with less vertical travel this vehicle is performing compared to this. This is how The suspension functions by absorbing the vibrations or shocks. See this illustration also. Road, when it is like this, you can observe here clearly the red color circles are the wheels which are always on contact with the road. So what is helping to contact with the road properly is this suspension system, this yellow one, which has the flexibility of expanding and compressing, or compressing and expanding as per the road condition. So here it is giving proper road contact, absorbing the shocks, and overall it is preventing the vibrations of the main component, that is the body of the vehicle. You can see the tires how they have contacted in spite of this huge undulations on the road. So this shock absorbing mechanism or vibration absorbing mechanism also prevents the cracks on the vehicle, so it will be safe and smooth driving. Overall, one can feel the pleasure in the driving. One more important thing is that the front suspension system of a vehicle has to be well synchronized with the steering geometry. The linkages provided in the suspension system are to be well synchronized with the steering geometry, because majority of the front wheel drive vehicles, the suspension system linkages acts as the kingpin in negotiating a torque. So the steering geometry, the camber angle also plays critical role. So the design of the suspension system has to be well synchronized with the steering geometry. This is another critical point. The driver of the vehicle has to maintain discipline by honoring the road signs when he is driving. Ignorance of road signs leads to health problems, because the potholes, it's not only about the potholes, even speed breakers, if you ignore and drive with high speed, the vehicle starts jumping, and which the shocks or vibrations are transmitted to the spine of this driver, leads to damage to the spine. Main function of the suspension is the dampening the vibrations, absorb the shocks. So which are all the dampening components in the suspension system? We can see the four types of vibration dampening components in the vehicles. The first one is the coil spring, looks like this. This is the helical metallic spring. So when there is a load, the spring compresses. When the spring is compressed, energy is stored in the spring, which is meant for releasing the energy. So energy, whatever is stored in any of these things, has to be released. So when the spring is compressed, the energy is stored. That's why it bounces back by releasing the energy. The second type of the dampening component is the leaf springs. So these are made with a rectangular spring steel flat plates through a special process, which I will be explaining in the coming videos. Stacked one over the other like this and fastened through a center bolt and clamps. This will be used as a set, and when there is a load on the leaf spring, it flexes like this, and during the flexing, the energy stored here, the way the energy is stored when the spring is compressed, and the stored energy is released through bounce back of the spring. And third component is the shock absorber. Shock absorber is mainly used in combination with any of these two dampening devices, either with the coil spring or with the leaf spring. So when these components absorbs the shocks and simultaneously transmits some vibration to the chassis. Such vibrations or shocks generated through these springs will be absorbed by the shock absorber. The functioning of these all three components will be explained in separate videos. This is how the shock absorber is functioned. You can see this animation. When the spring is flexed or compressed, load is acted on this piston, it is compressed. Inside this oil is filled. Okay. The displacement of oil through a narrow space makes the delay in action and also absorbing the shocks through transmitting the heat through this fluid. And the fourth one, the shock absorbing element, dampening element, is the tires what we use on the vehicle. Yes, of course, the tire also, a well inflated or properly inflated tire also is a shock absorbing part. Springs as well as the shock absorber and the tire together, they will work to give a smooth driving to the driver. If the shock absorber does, if the suspension system doesn't function properly, what happens? So what are the stresses developed due to the transmission of vibration shocks leads to crack in the chassis and even sometimes to breakage. And lot of discomfort to the driver, loss of control. As discussed, spine problem is different here, and also the premature failure of the or premature or uneven wear of the tires, and sometimes we can see the cases like axle breakage also. So this is how a poor suspension or ineffective suspension creates the problems. Please go through these 3 pages notes explaining in detail about the parts involved in the suspension system, how they are made and how they will work. I will also be explaining about few types of suspension systems employed in the vehicle. In case you have any queries, you can always contact me through the email. I request you and your friends to subscribe to my channel. I request you and your friends to kindly subscribe to my channel